Imagine a room with two people. On the left is Sarah. Sarah is a literal genius. She has an IQ that could probably power a small city, and she spends her days quietly optimizing the company's back-end architecture in ways that save millions of dollars. On the right is Dave. Dave is okay. He is competent enough to not get fired, but his real talent is being visible. He is always in the meetings, always the first to offer a status update, and always the guy grabbing coffee with the VP. Now, if the world were a pure meritocracy, Sarah should be clearing double Dave's salary. But I have run the numbers, and the corporate world does not work like a math equation. In the actual payoff matrix of a modern career, Dave is often the one getting the 20% raise, while Sarah gets a polite nod and more work. We like to tell ourselves that corporate life is an IQ contest, but it is actually a visibility game played on top of a very basic competence flaw. Once you are smart enough to do the job, your additional brilliance starts to offer diminishing returns. Meanwhile, your visibility, your political skill, and your status signals offer compounding interest. This is what I call the Goldfish Strategy. You do not necessarily need to be the smartest predator in the ocean. You just need to be the brightest, most visible fish in the tank where the food is dropped. Today, we are going to look at why being strategically average and highly visible is the most rational financial move you can make. Before we dive into the data that proves why geniuses often stall out, I want to make a quick deal with you. If you are watching this, you probably care about the return on investment of your time. You could spend the next decade grinding away in silence, hoping someone notices your brilliance. Or you can spend the next 20 minutes learning how the game is actually scored. This might be the best ROI on your time all year, because understanding the gap between performance and perception is worth more than any technical certification. If you find this perspective valuable, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It is the easiest way to make sure you do not miss the next deep dive into how money and careers actually function in the real world. I have spent a lot of time looking at career trajectories, and the people who reach the top aren't always the ones with the highest test scores. They are the ones who understand how to broadcast their value. So, let's look at the first pillar of the Goldfish Strategy, the perception gap, and why your manager is probably blind to half of what you actually do. The fundamental mistake most high performers make is assuming that their boss is a perfect observer. We imagine the manager as this omniscient being who sees every line of code, every solved ticket, and every refined spreadsheet. But the reality is much messier. Most managers are underwater themselves. They do not observe your work. They observe proxies for your work. Think about it like this. If a tree falls in the forest and no one is there to hear it, it still makes a sound. But if you save the company $50,000 on a Tuesday and no one is in the meeting to hear about it, does it actually impact your bonus? Game theory tells us that decision makers operate on perceived value, not actual value. There is a famous essay by a writer named Benny that lays this out bluntly. He argues that a human who generates a 15% revenue increase, but works invisibly, will almost always lose to a human who generates zero revenue, but attends every single meeting and speaks up. This isn't a glitch in the system. It is the system. Humans are biologically wired to value what is right in front of them. We use mental shortcuts. If I see Dave in every meeting looking busy and talking about strategic alignment, my brain labels Dave as a key player. If I never see Sarah, my brain eventually forgets Sarah exists, regardless of what her output looks like on a server log. This creates a massive gap. You can deliver 100 units of value, but if only 20 are visible, you are effectively a 20-unit employee in the eyes of the person holding the checkbook. The Goldfish Strategy starts with acknowledging this brutal truth. Visibility is the bridge between your contribution and your opportunity. Without that bridge, you are just shouting into a void. If you think that perception gap is just a minor annoyance, wait until you see the math behind it. In game theory terms, we have what is called a principal-agent problem. The principal, which is your boss, cannot perfectly monitor the agent, which is you. Because they cannot see everything, they rely on signals. These signals include things like your contributions in meetings, your status updates, and even your physical or virtual presence. Research shows that visibility builds a specific kind of trust that raw performance simply cannot touch. I have seen leadership blogs and LinkedIn posts echo this over and over. They say that performance is essential, but visibility is what builds recognition. Many high performers think their results will speak for themselves, but results are actually quite soft-spoken. Results don't have a voice unless you give them one. Think about the visibility equation from the perspective of a director. They have 10 employees. 5 are geniuses who hate meetings. 5 are average but communicative. When a promotion spot opens up, the director isn't going to go on a forensic mission to find the hidden genius. They are going to pick the person they already trust, the one whose value they have been reminded of every single week. This is why you see people who generate almost nothing but attend every meeting getting ahead. They are optimizing for the signal, while the geniuses are optimizing for the noise. In a corporate environment, the signal is everything. If you generate 60 units of value but make 80 units visible through clever communication and status demos, you are perceived as a rock star. If you generate 100 but show 0, you are perceived as a ghost. And ghosts do not get raises. This is the first rule of the goldfish. You have to be in the light if you want to be fed. Most people stop here and assume this is just about bragging. They think, I don't want to be that annoying person who won't stop talking. But they are missing the psychological point. This isn't about ego, it is about cognitive load. Your manager has a limited amount of mental energy. By making your work visible and easy to understand, you are actually doing them a favor. You are reducing their cognitive load. When you provide a concise, digestible update on your wins, you are handing them the script they need to go and advocate for you in the rooms where you aren't present. This is where the quiet genius loses. They assume that by providing more work, they are providing more value. But more work often just means more noise for the manager to filter through. If a manager has to work hard to understand what you did, they will eventually stop trying. The goldfish, on the other hand, is bright and easy to track. They pick tasks with a high signal-to-effort ratio. They focus on cross-functional work where they get seen by multiple teams. They show up in the rooms where decisions are made. They aren't just working, they are narrating their work. Psychologically, this creates a sense of reliability. We tend to trust what we can see and predict. If I see your progress every week, I feel like you are in control. If I only see your result once every 6 months, even if it is a brilliant result, I spent the previous 5 months wondering if you were actually doing anything. That uncertainty is a career killer. The cost of being invisible isn't just a lack of praise, it is a lack of trust. So, how do you actually use this without feeling like a cartoon villain? We will get to the specific project selection in a minute. But first, you need to fix your broadcast frequency. The goal of the Goldfish Strategy isn't to lie about your competence. It is to ensure your competence is actually registered by the system. You have to anchor your signal in real outcomes. I recommend a simple value broadcast routine. Every single week, you should be sending a concise update to your manager that summarizes 3 to 5 outcomes tied to actual business metrics. Notice I said outcomes, not activities. Nobody cares that you attended a meeting. They care that you aligned 3 departments on the Q3 roadmap. Once a quarter, you should be sharing a one-pager that shows a before and after snapshot of the key performance indicators you have moved. This makes it incredibly easy for your manager to copy and paste your success into their own reports to their bosses. You are essentially providing them with the ammunition to defend your salary. Research even shows that high performers are willing to pay to self-promote their competence when they believe their performance is high, because they know that social influence has intrinsic value. This is not fluff, it is a career investment. You are building a paper trail of value that exists outside of your own head. By doing this, you clear that competence threshold and then maximize your perceived value. You are no longer just an employee, you are a visible asset. This is how you stop being the hidden genius in the filter and start being the goldfish that everyone knows is valuable. But there is another layer to this, and it has nothing to do with how hard you work. It is about who you know. If you think being the smartest person in the room is your ticket to the C-suite, I have some bad news for your bank account. In fact, if we look at the data, being too smart might actually be holding you back. We're about to look at a study that found something shocking. Once you hit a certain IQ level, your intelligence stops predicting your income, and a completely different, much softer skill takes over. If you have ever wondered why that guy who can barely use Excel is your boss, the answer is in the next 4 minutes. We are taught from a young age that IQ is the ultimate predictor of success. We think that if we are just smarter, more analytical, and more technically capable, the world will eventually beat a path to our door. But there is a well-cited study by Todd and his colleagues from 2009 that flips this on its head. They looked at something called political skill. They defined it as the ability to effectively understand others at work and use that knowledge to influence them to act in ways that enhance personal or organizational objectives. And what they found was brutal for the pure genius crowd. Political skill was positively associated with almost every major career outcome. Total compensation, the number of promotions, career satisfaction, and even general life satisfaction. Among the various dimensions of political skill, networking ability had the strongest relationship with these outcomes. This suggests that once you are smart enough to get through the door, your marginal IQ points are essentially useless for your wallet. If Sarah has an IQ of 140 and Dave has an IQ of 110, but Dave has high political skill, Dave will likely out-earn Sarah for the rest of their lives. Why? Because Dave understands that the corporate ladder isn't made of rungs, it is made of people. Organizations are not computers, they are tribes. And in a tribe, the ability to navigate social structures is always more valuable than the ability to solve a complex, abstract problem in isolation. The strategically average employee who invests in their political skill is playing a game with much higher expected rewards than the genius who is trying to optimize the product by an extra 2%. Let's look at the math of impression management. Leadership commentators often call this a fundamental meta skill. In one study, leaders who mastered impression management received higher performance ratings and were perceived as having stronger competence, even when their objective output was the same as their peers. It is essentially a force multiplier. If your performance is a 7 out of 10, but your impression management is a 10 out of 10, your perceived performance might be a 9. If your performance is a 10 out of 10, but your impression management is a 2, your perceived performance is probably a 4. This is the math that kills careers. The genius thinks they are being judged on their 10, but they are actually being judged on the 4. This is why networking ability dominates. Networking isn't just about knowing people for the sake of it. It is about building a broad internal map of who holds the power and what they care about. The politically skilled employee knows which projects the CEO is watching. They know which manager is about to get a budget increase. They know who is frustrated and how to help them. This information allows them to position themselves in the path of opportunity. Meanwhile, the genius is in the corner, head down, optimizing a system that the CEO might not even care about next month. They are playing a game of truth, while the average employee is playing a game of alignment. In a corporate hierarchy, alignment is paid much better than truth. This is why networking ability predicts career mobility and compensation so much better than your GPA or your technical certifications. It is about your ability to read the room and then influence the room to see your value. There is a deep psychological reason why this works, and it involves the dopaminergic reward system in our brains. Recognition programs, public praise, and promotions aren't just HR formalities. They are hits of dopamine. When a manager gives a public shout-out to Dave, it feels good for Dave, but it also reinforces the manager's own sense of being a good leader. Status signals are highly visible and easy to share. Announcements, titles, and even small perks like Employee of the Month act as markers that signal to the rest of the tribe who is winning. A 2024 meta-analysis found that employees given these symbolic status rewards reported higher motivation, at least in the short term. But here is the catch. Those status signals often only loosely track real competence. They track the appearance of competence. Game theoretically, if you know that the firm rewards visible status players more than quiet contributors, the rational move is to become a status player. Jesse Hirsch argues that corporate meritocracy is often a myth designed to justify inequality. He suggests that advancement is frequently based on a very narrow range of achievements, often tied to things like management or sales, while deep technical contributions go unrewarded because they are hard to turn into a story. The average employee who understands how to acquire and display status markers will capture more of the reward pool every single time. They understand that the office is a dopamine economy. They provide the narrative and the visible wins that make the leadership feel like the company is succeeding. The genius, by contrast, often provides uncomfortable truths or complex solutions that don't fit into a slide deck. One of these is easy to reward with a promotion. The other is a headache that gets buried. This is why optics management is a survival skill. If you want to win this game, you have to treat political skill like a technical skill. Stop calling it dirty or fake. It is an optimization problem. Each unit of improvement in your networking ability likely yields a higher return on compensation than an equivalent improvement in your technical ability. I suggest starting with 3 moves. First, identify the nodes in your organization, the people who everyone goes to for information. Build a genuine relationship with them. Second, master the art of the low-stakes check-in. Don't just talk to people when you need something. Build social capital when you don't need it, so it is there when you do. Third, focus on organizational citizenship. This is the perception that you are a good citizen who helps others and cares about the company culture. Research shows that employees perceived as good citizens get higher performance ratings even if their output is average. This is because they make the manager's life easier and the team's environment better. By investing in these soft skills, you are building a compounding asset. Unlike technical skills, which can become obsolete when technology changes, the ability to navigate human hierarchies is a universal skill. It works in any company, in any industry, and at any level. You are playing the actual payoff structure of the corporate world, not the one they advertised in the job description. This is how you use the Goldfish Strategy to out-earn the geniuses who refuse to play the game. We are getting into the final strategy for how to pick the right projects to maximize this visibility. But I want to invite you to become a more permanent part of this conversation. If you enjoy this kind of deep dive into the hidden mechanics of money and careers, consider clicking the Join button below. Our members, the Optimizers, get priority comment replies and custom badges for the channel. It is a way to support the research that goes into these videos and join a community of people who are looking to play the career game more strategically. We don't just look at the surface. We look at the math and the psychology that actually moves the needle. If you want to be one of the people who truly understands the payoff matrix, we would love to have you. Now, let's talk about the final piece, the Peter Principle, and how geniuses accidentally sabotage their own careers. At the end of the day, the Goldfish Strategy is about a simple realization. You are not being paid for what you do, You are being paid for what the organisation thinks you do. The geniuses who lose are the ones who optimise for the wrong target. They optimise for truth, elegance, or perfection. But the organisation optimises for risk management and perceived stability. If you can clear the competence flaw, invest in your visibility, and master the political landscape, you will find that the average path is actually the most lucrative one. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Have you seen a Dave out-earn a Sarah in your own career? Let's treat this as a peer review in the comments. I'll see you in the next one.